system unfolding. Military science fiction podcast. Untold stories every Wednesday. Military science fiction podcast. Discussion, interviews, reviews, and rants. Military science fiction podcast.
Well, hey everybody, welcome back to the show. Today we're talking about the stories that got away. And I'm feeling a little under the weather, so I can't make writer gang signs right now, but Jeff can do it. We wanted to talk about not just like there's the idea that, okay, there was a story you haven't been able to write or a book you haven't been able to write, but as you get to a certain point, there's also once you have a series or you have a thing you write that takes off, now you're sort of beholden to that series and those readers, right? So how do you hedge your bets on that is a thing we wanted to touch on. So I don't know, Jeff, you want to kick it off? This was your topic to start with, I think. So why don't you jump in?
I'm sorry, I missed all of that. No. Yeah, so when I first started writing, I wrote in urban fantasy. I'm sure a lot of people are aware. And one of the very first questions I got was, is that what you want to write for the rest of your life? And I was like, no. I'm like, well, you better use a pen name then, because if it hits off big, you will be.
Mm-hmm.
And so, of course, I did use a pen name. And it did kind of hit it off, but the publisher declined to pick up the next two that came out after it. And, and that was the end of that. But had it been like a million bestseller, I'd probably still be writing them to this day. But they wouldn't be very good because I wasn't very good, and that failure helped me get better. So I'm really glad I did use the pen name too, because now I'm in my science fiction career. That would muddy the water of like, well, what does he write? And as we all know, Amazon relies on these algorithms of what you write to promote you to people, organically. So the best possible outcome for someone searching for science fiction is they come up with my name. They just say top sci-fi books. Amazon will like, well, here's an author and he sold a bunch of sci-fi books, and all the people who read your books, all the people who read books that you've read have read his book, but so you'll like it. If I had written an urban fantasy under my name, that wouldn't work that way, because it would be muddied with urban fantasy and be muddied with other things. Superheroes is kind of a line. I put them in science fiction category when I was selling them, because I naturally write a lot of science in my stuff, and Arsenal's an armored superhero, so it kind of made sense to me that she was science fiction, not fantasy. But it's really important that when you are writing, that you make sure that the thing that you're writing you love, because you have no idea how difficult it is to write 9 or 15 or 30, or in some cases 50 books in a series, or a series that you didn't want to write in the first place.
Yep.
50.
Well, isn't Backyard Starship up to 50?
I don't. There's more than one series, but I don't know. I don't think the main series is.
I mean, not that I think Terry he's writing it. I'm just saying that
it's a long series. There's a lot. Yeah.
And so I'm writing book 9 of Grimm's War. I'm having a great time, but the last 2 years have been a struggle, and I had to write something else in a different genre just to, feel creative and be excited again. And, so I'm like 30,000 words in The Longest Battle, and it's going great. But the struggle on that is absolutely real. I know Rick can attest, having written 15 or 50 Drop Trooper books. I'm not sure how many. So, and I remember our buddy Scott Moon talking about once, like how he could only write, he didn't want to write another firefight because he just couldn't do it anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And part of what my struggle with writing Grimm's War is I've got to keep the space battles interesting and not repetitive, and not be the same thing. Like at one point I realized, like, oh, hey, this is the third time there's been a stern chase, final battle. I can't do that again. I've got to do something else. I'm going to mix it up.
Scott should have done was had Willem Dafoe describe his firefight.
There was a firefight. I quote that all the freaking time. My kids have never seen it, but they know that quote. And so it's really important when you're writing to write something you love, write in a genre you love. If you're going to experiment, write outside of your genre, write something, because you've got an idea for something, use a pen name. I mean, I know this is not necessarily a popular opinion. It's not everybody's opinion, but it is somewhat statistically, scientifically based. Use a pen name if you're going to write more than one step away from your genre. If you want to write sci-fi and you really want to write, epic fantasy, and you're a mid-lister like me, you really need to use a pen name to write epic fantasy. If you're making 600 grand a year off your books, you're good. Write whatever you want. But, up until that point, up until you're making that kind of money, you really need to focus down on a genre. If you want to write other genres, that's great. Use a pen name. But also bear in mind that you can only write so many books in a year.
Opportunity cost is the word that.
Right.
Yeah.
You have to make choices. I mean, and you could, so I think the first thing somebody will push back on and be like, well, what about Daniel Abraham, or like Adrian Tchaikovsky? Like they write different genres and whatever. And I think you talked
Daniel Abraham?
Abraham. I think, isn't that his name? He's one.
No, I mean, like, are you, is what I'm saying.
That's the thing. Yeah, exactly.
Are you George Martin? Are you
George
Brandon Sanderson? I mean,
Sanderson's kind of like, does he write? Well, he writes fan. Does he write?
He exclusively wrote fantasy until he was big, and then he wrote
Has he done
superheroes and some other stuff?
But I'm thinking of like even within those books, like readers won't want to go between, like they don't want to read fantasy.
Well, Sanderson readers read the genre of Brandon Sanderson.
Yeah, I think
he's like Harry Potter readers read the genre of Harry Potter.
He's like a Stephen King, but
yeah,
others
they don't count.
Like they don't want to move between it.
And you can kind of tell somebody who hasn't done their research. I don't call them amateurs or ignorant, but they haven't done their research. If the first thing they say is, well, what about George Martin or Brandon Sanderson or whoever? You're not them. I'm not them. Nobody is them. When you become them, you can do whatever you want. But you got to become them first.
Stupid.
Well, I think their marketing
I try to be more politic than that, Rick.
Argue that they wish they were writing the same thing because they have a hard time selling something that is a complete genre shift under that same name because people expect it.
But I mean, Brandon Sanderson, he literally could write anything he wants. He wrote 4 books without titles or genres and sold them for $65 million. I mean, he can do whatever he wants. We can't. I've got to write science fiction. Mm-hmm. I'm pushing it by writing a space opera because that's different enough from military sci-fi that I'm pushing it a little bit. And I know some people don't necessarily see the difference, but the readers know the difference. And if you're really into military sci-fi, space opera is like, oh, hey, where all the science and tactics go? It's like, nah, he just, it's like the scene in Avengers when Cap grabs that M4 on the helicarrier and he just does it World War II style, spray and pray. He doesn't lift it, doesn't aim. He just
World War II style wasn't spray and pray, but
he just, grabs it like it's a one of those the Tommy gun and just and it was always funny because like that's the World War II movie, you'd see that.
Mm-hmm.
Now everybody's all real tactical. The space opera's like that. It's just it's from the hip. It's fun. It's funny. It's not necessarily meant to be realistic.
And that's space opera. You have a lot more leeway actually within it. Like I mean, I'm on book 11 now with my M14 series, and I just think back to the things I've been able to do where I get kind of bored and I just do something that seems fun. And as long as it follows the rules of what has been set up, readers have been pretty okay with it. I mean, I did a whole like half a book from the point of view of a parrot, a gray parrot, and people want more of the parrot. They love it. So that's one thing to think about, but that's the problem in the beginning. Often it's not like you can plan for a lot of these things. You can, but when you're trying so many different things, you never quite know, what's going to hit. So don't write mystery if you don't like mystery. I think that would be if you're chasing trends, which we've talked about in other shows, that's really where it gets tough. Because if you think, oh, everybody's writing thrillers, I want to write a thriller, and then it turns out you don't actually like thrillers and you don't know why that thriller was successful, that's going to be real tough for you. And you might have to, that's the problem too. If you use your name and now you have to just abandon your name, and you might say, no, I don't want to abandon my name, but at least the publisher that most of us work with, they will just straight up tell you can't use that name anymore. You need to come up with a new name. And that can be really heartbreaking when that was actually well, wait a second, that's mine. That's my name. Like, well, that's cool. You just can't use it if you're going to publish with us.
What's my
So
name?
yeah. Um, is it
And
your,
I've seen that happen with people we know
yeah.
where they've launched books and they've just bombed, and they bombed so bad that Athon was like, "Listen, we'll keep publishing you, but you got to come up with a pen name and do something different."
Rick, it's not Rick's real name. Rick is actually Steve. I think that's what we all aren't aware of.
Well, my name is Gwyneth Paltrow.
Gwyneth, you're looking good. You're looking way
I
better.
am a meat popsicle.
Yeah.
I don't know, Rick, what do you think?
Um, I am. I don't want to call it stuck because that makes it sound like I hate writing military science fiction, and I don't. I love writing it, but I am pretty much stuck in that genre, like Jeff, because this is my job, you know. And it's like if I were a plumber, and I decided, hey, I'm going to all of a sudden be an electrician. Well, nobody who knew my name and was a customer of mine for plumbing is going to start calling me for electrical work,
Hmm.
and I know that, and I trained a long time to be a plumber,
That's a
so
great analogy.
Well,
I'm
even
going to stick
I
me
would
in
go
plumbing.
deeper and say residential versus commercial. Like you could
Possibly,
still
yeah.
be an electrician, but you haven't done this other type of, work. So it's very difficult to
No,
see.
that's a really
I
good
didn't really
analogy,
want to go
though.
that deep into the analogy, James. But yeah, it's your job. You know, it's if I was doing this, if I had if I was like Craig Martell and had three pensions to draw on, and Craig Martell does this. He writes whatever he wants. He writes thrillers. He writes medical thrillers. He writes science fiction. You know, because he
He
can.
wrote a science fiction legal thriller.
Yeah,
Right.
and if I was, you know, drawing on a couple of pensions and was doing this for fun because it's what I love to do, and it is what I love to do. But if that's the only reason, then I would write. You know, everybody knows because I've said it a million times. I would go ahead and stop everything else and write that epic fantasy trilogy. You know, but I have to work with the I don't want to say constrictions, but like the structure that I'm allowed in my job, and I have to write books that fit into a certain category to keep the people reading them who follow me.
Well,
So
let's say you
yeah,
do get to a place where you're not paying for law school, um, and you could do that. Like, how would you approach that? What would you do?
I don't even know at this point. I mean,
Yeah.
it would have to. I would basically. I know what I would need.
Hmm.
I would need to not write anything else for a year to get.
Oh man, I can already hear our publishers being like, "No, you can't not write stuff for a year. You have to write now."
Yeah, I would have to not write anything else for a year and concentrate on that epic fantasy. And at that point, I would have lost all of my audience for military science fiction slash military-ish space opera.
Hmm.
Well, it wouldn't just be that you'd write for a year, though, right? Because like I know you write fast, but epic fantasy is kind of a different beast. You
I
have to
could write
change.
3 books in a year.
Well, no, I know you can write 3 books in a year, but if you write 3 books and you're really enjoying writing them, you're going to write more. It's probably going to be more than a year, per se.
Well, what I
Uh,
imagine I would do is I would write those three and then try to figure out a way to release them because I have no idea. You know, I don't know if I could do it through one of the small publishers.
so what you
I'd have
do
to
is you pay
sell.
AK DeBuff to market your books
Well,
because apparently she can do it.
I don't know if it depends on how much money that I have that I can throw around. But um, yeah, I would probably go back to writing what I'm used to at that point until I find out that this trilogy is huge and people want more, and then I'll write a follow-up trilogy.
Hmm.
But the trilogy would end that story. So I know exactly the story I want to tell. So
So it would just be a trilogy, it wouldn't be a series.
no, not a series.
So I say the challenge would be that if that series then took off and maybe it did reasonably well, now you have to make a decision between those two things. So, between what you've been writing before and the new thing.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of opportunity cost in this. And the people
Well,
that can,
it makes it a little simpler if it's just a trilogy and not a series.
yeah, yeah.
Because no matter how much people want more of it, it's just a trilogy. And if they sell insane and you make millions of dollars off it, great. It's still just a trilogy.
Hmm.
Yeah, I have never had a desire to write a long, ongoing fantasy series. I just want to tell this one story.
Epic fantasy is a lot different than middle sci-fi because like you can't really have a long ongoing epic fantasy because that kind of
Makes it
stops
less
the
epic.
point. That's kind of against the point of epic fantasy, right? There's supposed to be this big dramatic conclusion
Well, I
for
think
the writer
everybody,
to beat.
everybody wants to be Wheel of Time, but they don't. It's pretty tough to do that. And even Wheel of Time really abused their readers,
Oh my God. I
I'm
stopped
still
so
convinced,
bad. I
and
stopped.
nobody can convince me otherwise that the Eye of the Storm, no, what was
Eye
the
of the
first one?
World. Eye of the
Eye of the
World. It
World
was a
was a
standalone.
standalone novel that was never intended to be a series.
Well,
And then when it blew up, the publisher made him write more. You just can't convince me otherwise because like the book ended with him defeating the Dark Lord, and then you find out later on in the second book, like, oh, that wasn't really the Dark Lord. That was just one of his 12 apostles that he has to now
yeah.
defeat all the other 11. And those books just meander from that point. Like
You
I
guys
have a
ever
book
play?
that's tight.
You ever play Shadow of Mordor, the game? Have you played it, Jeff?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh
It
yeah.
always it makes me think of like Shadow of Mordor, where you think you fought like one Urukai, and then oh no, there's like 12 more that you have to
Yeah.
and move up. Well, no, he did. I went down the rabbit hole on Eye of the World and Robert Jordan. Like he had been writing, he wrote some Conan novels. He was doing a lot of
I
other
read his Conan novels.
stuff. Yeah, I liked him. But he sold Eye of the World to Tor, and it was one of their biggest fantasy pushes they'd ever done. Like they sent, I want to say they targeted like 1,000 bookstores across the U.S. and sent Eye of the World out, and that's one of the reasons that so many people saw it was because they just were sending it everywhere, and then it did that kickstarted it, and it was originally designed to be a standalone. Then it became a trilogy. Then he just kept doing it when it went as I think he reached the
When his
point
bank account was getting low.
yeah, like Fires of Heaven might have been, it was going to be a 5 book series. And you can definitely tell in the series where it just starts going on and on. But at that point, it's an engine that makes money. So they just kept doing it. But they were pretty intentional about it. I think that's like Jordan had a pretty specific thing he wanted to do, I think, to start with. But then he just had to keep doing it, which I guess is a great example of what we're talking about. Like I won't say he ran out of ideas, but he was just definitely stretching that spaghetti out, as far as he
How
possibly
many
could.
more times is he going to have the girl curl her hair around her
Curl her
finger,
hair or
or
adjust her dress or
yeah, or talk about the dress? It was just like that's what got me out of it. I'm just like, there is so much padding in this book. I just can't take it anymore.
yeah. Yeah. Also, yeah, those books had a lot of weird stuff in them. Um,
I frankly, at some point in those books, I stopped liking all of the characters.
mhm. Well, and
It,
as much as I like Sanderson, I feel like he didn't understand some of the characters. Like the Matt character, I don't think he fully understood that character. But I don't know, I digress. I listened to that on audio, which probably helped me get through it all. So it's a little,
I'll tell you, the first book on audio is a chore to get through
yeah.
because his prose that early on was not really that good. The
Well, I
story was
remember working
great.
at
The
Walden
world
Books
building is great.
when it came
Go ahead,
out,
Tom.
and like everybody I knew was reading it, and I didn't read it until I'd married Becky because I just wasn't that much into epic fantasy.
Yeah.
Well, I was in like maybe ninth grade, I think, and I was a total Tolkien snob, right? Like anything Tolkien does is the best. And so I saw it, I was like, oh, that's just a rip off of Tolkien. I'm not going to read that. And I honestly didn't read those books until I was maybe in my 20s, I guess. But I don't know, I'm more of a sword and sorcery, and like I always like shorter because like Elric was always novellas, Conan is short stories, Fafhrd and the Grey Mouser was short stories. Like that's the thing that I loved more before I even read Tolkien, and so I like shorter fantasy. That's not this huge epic. I think the first epic thing I ever read was Tad Williams's Memory, Sorrow, and Thorn, and he had the same problem with that. Like he wrote 2 books that were relatively tight. I won't call them tight really, but then the
Well, you
last the
said you're a
last
Tolkien fan. Wouldn't the first epic thing you read been Lord of the Rings?
well, it was The Hobbit.
Okay.
But I don't know. I read them pretty fast. They felt a lot tighter to me, I guess, than other things that I read. But
Well, they were shorter.
um, yeah, yeah, that's true. But then even
I'll
the
tell
same
you. I
thing
mean,
with
I don't mean to denigrate the memory of a master because he was,
yeah,
but Two Towers almost lost me because he made what I think is a narrative mistake of
mhm,
putting all of the Battle of Helm's Deep in the first section of the book, and then all of Sam and Frodo's
yeah.
journey towards Mordor in the second section. And that journey towards Mordor was boring as heck. I mean, it was just like sorrow and suffering and as MSG 3000 used to say, rock climbing the whole time. It was just like, oh my God, couldn't you have interspersed this with the Battle of Helm's Deep?
Well, and even that when Perry or Merry and Pippin end up with the Ents, and you're like, what? What's happened? Like we're off on this other complete tangent. But that's part of the if you want to do you want to move into a different genre and do different things. I mean, that is kind of where I like it when an author moves from another genre into a different one sometimes, because sometimes they bring the things that I like. They bring, fast plotting and characters that I like, and they're not. I mean, that's actually something I like about Adrian Tchaikovsky is that he tends to be very plot driven, and I like his ideas, and he does the same things between science fiction and fantasy for the most part. Um, but I'm trying to think of other examples than
I
him.
can't think of
Go ahead.
any that I have liked that have gone into other genres, really. I mean, Jim Butcher went into a kind of a different subgenre. He went from urban fantasy to when he wrote the
The Pokemon books.
yeah,
Yeah.
those were more epic fantasy.
Hmm.
Uh, but other than that, and I guess he wrote like the Aeronaut's Windlass, which was kind of steampunkish
Hmm.
in a way. Um, but yeah, it's still all fantasy. I mean, it's not really. Maybe John Stakely, he wrote military science fiction Armor, and then he
Hmm.
wrote Vampires with a dollar sign, which was horror slash. It was yeah, Vampires with the dollar sign was kind of a precursor to Larry Correa's Monster Hunter International in a lot of ways.
But didn't he only
Um,
write those two novels? I keep forgetting about
yes,
vampires. Yeah.
yes.
So I think that's the
I,
challenge too, is like any writer in the 90s, they were like typically selling, I feel like one-off things like this. Whereas now where Kindle Unlimited has so changed the way people read that
mhm.
it's all about getting that read through, right? And if you can pull somebody from one book to the next, and even the idea of like how many words you write in a book has gotten so much longer. Like I don't know, been a little bit of a trip with some older sci-fi, and it's all like under 80,000 words. Like most of what Philip Dick wrote was under 70,000 words even, and that was a novel.
A lot of the
Um,
science fiction paperbacks I read as a kid were about 40 to 50,000 words.
yeah, and that was a perfectly acceptable novel. Whereas now you're not getting paid unless you can pull somebody through 100,000 words.
Yeah.
Um, so it really changes the way, and even within, I guess, what you're trying to sell. If you're trying to sell to that trad market versus Kindle Unlimited market and what they want, um, it's pretty fundamental.
What's crazy is John Stakely wrote two novels, one of which is the seminal military science fiction, period, and that's Armor. I mean, the game Halo is based on it, and they made Vampires into a movie.
Yeah.
I did not know that.
Vampires was a great book too, but they kind of screwed it up in the movie, I think.
I'm gonna have to go seek that out.
It's funny because Vampires and Armor, two main characters have the same names,
Felix?
Felix and Jack Crow.
Oh, right on. That's funny. He was. I read that he was a little out there mentally. So,
Yeah.
but both. I mean, Armor is so. At least most of Armor is so good. I kind of skip all the other stuff. Besides, that's not Felix.
Died at 59. Right. That kind of brings up a point. Like I think about
My
this
age.
sometimes too. Like I just turned 50. I only got so much time left, right? So do you
9 years more than me.
yeah, I mean, is that anything that enters into your mind when it comes to how you plan things out?
I got too many bills to pay to worry about the legacy.
Yeah. There is no legacy.
There's only Zool.
Well, my kids have read all my stuff, and I'm proud that I was able to write stuff that my kids could read. And to me, that's my legacy right there, is the kids getting to read it.
I'm just going to feed the great AI, and then someday it'll like resurface from the database they use.
But I think that I do think about that a lot, actually. Like how many, realistically, how many more books, if I write 4 books a year, how many more books can I write in my life before, that the inevitable end happens? And it's like 40, maybe 40. So I gotta pick 40 good ones, and make sure I leave enough money behind for my family to survive on if I so happen to go early. And yeah, I think about that, which is another thing you need to think about when you're thinking about, like, well, I'm going to just take 2 years off and go write this other series, even though my primary series is very successful. You got to think about that. Like, are you gonna kill all your momentum and your career and possibly your future because you have an itch to write something else? And I just don't think it's worth it.
Well, and something you could think about, which we kind of touched on, but okay, so you have a thing that's doing well. How much room is there to play within that idea? Like, what is it that attracts you about the epic fantasy thing? Is it like having characters that go and explore a new world? Is it introducing a different kind of character? Is it, you know,
No,
uh,
it's the on the word I'm looking for. It's like the myth making of it. It's not that's not it. They like the thing that like harks back to the myths of old. Like
yeah,
uh, Kukulin and what's that Babylonian myth? Um,
shoot,
the original hero's journey. What's his name?
well, like Jonathan Campbell, but or Joseph Campbell, I'm sorry, but yeah, who is the Babylonian god?
It's not a god; he's a man. But
Gilgamesh?
yes,
Gilgamesh,
Gilgamesh. Thank you,
Gilgamesh.
Gilgamesh. I want something that harks back to that kind of mythological epicness. That could be the founding mythology for a civilization.
Well, and where I was going with that is like, is there a way you could incorporate that into a military science fiction story? Like, is there
No.
something? No, I mean, well, like I just read that 4 minutes, the time travel thriller, right? Like what if and uh what's Gate Wargate Press is like all about the portal fantasies where we take a modern day military unit and we transport them into a mythological setting.
Yeah, but
Is that anything that's,
that to me reads more like sword and sorcery
yeah.
than epic fantasy. And I like sword and sorcery. Don't get sword and sorcery. Don't get me wrong, but that's a different genre. And I've written actually a couple of short stories in that, but it's a different genre than
Mhm.
I want to write that trilogy in.
I mean, I need to reread Brian Daley's Star Follows or Caramond because I think of that as epic fantasy, but it's been so long since I read it that, and that's the one where a armored company in Vietnam or
Yeah,
armored platoon gets
the first one
transported
was
to
the
it.
Doomfarers, I think.
Yeah, Doomfarers of Caramond,
Coromont. Yeah.
Coromond.
But that's a good question. I don't think it's epic fantasy because it just feels different. It doesn't feel epic fantasy to me has to have like some sort of threat to the world as it stands
Mm-hmm.
and something that will unite everybody against a common enemy, you know?
Well, see, I think about. Did you ever read Thomas Covenant by Stephen Donaldson?
And I
Like,
had no interest in that whatsoever.
well, but I mean, the conceit of that is that he gets pulled into a world and he's supposed to be the
Yeah.
savior, but he doesn't believe in it. All that is pretty annoying, but it is the fact that he gets pulled into this world. If you did that with a military unit, like I don't know, there could be ways to do that. Would it satisfy the audience? I would read a Rick Partlow Portal Fantasy. That was military science fiction, but that's me. So we'll have to poll the readers.
But if you pull a company of drop troopers into a epic fantasy, they would kill
Oh,
everything in a half an hour.
you
It'd
got
be
to
over with.
nerf them. You got to make them like knights, armored knights. Their fusion cores don't work in the other world.
And that also brings us to what people say they want versus what they really want.
That's true.
Lots of polls will reveal that people want X, Y, and Z, but when it comes down to it, they don't buy it.
Mhm.
And you can't really like. There's some books I would love to write, but I would need like Rick. I'd need like a year or two off to write them, and I just can't do that. And maintain my momentum that I built, and risk like having to go back to work. I mean, I don't want to do that.
It does suck.
I've already had to do that here and there as insurance costs skyrocketed last year. I don't want to have to do that again.
Yeah. Um, I don't know. If I sometimes think, what if I won that Mega Millions lotto thing for like $1 billion, and what would you do with your life if you had that money? What would you? I mean, once you paid everything off and bought a really nice ranch, uh, and gave everybody a little bit of money, what would you do with your everyday life? And I would not be writing, 10 books a year, 3,000 words a day. I would be stepping back and writing that epic fantasy, or, you know, and I would take my time writing it too, because I wouldn't be able to. All I have to do is finish it before I die.
Mhm. Yeah. It's all about those trade-offs. Like if you look at
She's too
budget,
young to have a cell phone, Jeff.
what's that?
I was telling Jeff she's too young to have a cell phone.
Oh,
She's chewing on a cell phone.
yeah, she wants to. As you look at, decisions that I don't know, just how much money you need, how much money you need to make, like what is a genre you're writing in, how much money does it make, could it make? I think, I don't know, just like some people don't write romance if you don't like romance, but that's where there's much more money there than anything we're talking about.
That's a
Um,
question.
Well, I
That's
mean, if you
also a
can
question of
write
what you
romance,
can.
write romance.
That's a question of what you can write more than what you
yeah.
want to write. I can't write romance. It's not possible because I've never read romance. You know, I've
I've
never.
told people this before. There's a overlapping circles of what you should be writing, and it's pretty easy
Yeah.
to figure out. It's what you want to write, what makes money, and what you can write. And I can't write romance, so that's out. But I can write science fiction of all flavors. I can write fantasy of all flavors. Okay, well, what do I want to write in those aspects? And once you figure out what you want to write, then figure out what's making the money. And if your goal is money, of course. If your goal is not money, then don't pay attention to us.
Yeah, I am not too proud to, like, using my plumbing analogy. I'm not too proud to go, work cleaning, cleaning out the bathroom pipes in a gym or something. I'll do whatever it takes to make a living. So if I could write romance, if I had read romance for years and knew how to do those formulas in a way that people liked, then I would. I'd do it, even though it's not my favorite thing to write, and definitely not my favorite thing to read. But I can't. It's too late in my life for me to step into a totally new genre that I've never read and prepare myself for writing it. So, I'm kind of stuck in certain, not just one lane, but like one section, and
Yeah, and again, stuck's the wrong word because we love doing this.
yeah,
Love doing this, but I love cheesecake. Still can't eat it every day. One, I would die. But two, okay, it's not entirely accurate to say I'd get tired of it because I used to work at the sandwich shop and I ate sandwiches, the same sandwich every single day for 3 years, and I never got tired of it. But occasionally, creatively, you're like, I want to do this other thing. And you got to find a way to make that work within the bounds of what you're doing, because otherwise you're going to kill your own career. And we've all seen, I say all, the three of us have seen people who have made it, been successful, immediately pivoted and did something else entirely. It was a disaster and they were never able to get the momentum back.
Yeah. I think the reason that I like to talk about this so much is that when I was first starting out, and I imagine it's the same for you guys, like this just isn't anything, you didn't get this info anywhere. It was just like figure out what you can write, try and sell what you can sell, but the intentionality about it, like there was no real info about that. You know, you might be able to get like a writer's market or something to look at, okay, these publishers are open to all this kind of stuff. And um but it was very difficult to get information about how to be intentional about how you approach your career this way, and how decisions you make in the beginning of your career or what you sell in the beginning of your career will shape like where you end up later on. um
And if you need help, like if you're on the Discord or if you want to join our Discord, which by the way, join our Discord,
yep.
and you're like, I don't know what I should be writing. I want to write, but because sometimes writers want to write, they have stories they want to tell, but they just don't know what they should be writing. And one story famously was I met a guy at a con. He was a really cool guy. He was writing space opera. It was 2020, and at the time, everybody was writing some version of Firefly, him included. And um, I ended up talking to him about having the right covers, and so he ended up contracting Vivid Covers, Becky's business, to do his covers. And about a year ago, whenever I asked my wife, I'm like, well, how's he doing? She's like, it's really funny. He stopped asking me for covers. And so I went and looked, and I couldn't find that he published anything else. So I reached out to him, and he started writing thrillers, and he's killing it as a thriller writer. And I asked him why, and he's like, well, I didn't really like science fiction. And I was like, well, why did you write it? And he was like, well, it just seemed like the thing that I ought to be doing because I like sci-fi movies and TV shows. But he didn't actually read science fiction. He read thrillers. So
Yeah. I like mysteries. I like to watch mysteries. I'll say that. I never, and even I grew up trying to read my mom's like brown paper bag of Ellery Queen magazines and Alfred Hitchcock that she would like trade. And I have never been able to write it. I don't know. It's just something that does not work for me.
I never really liked reading in fiction anyway, anything other than science fiction, fantasy, and to some extent, used to be, I would read, I don't know what you call them, the Tom Clancy style thrillers, not they're kind of military thriller type deal, but not the ones we have nowadays.
Yeah.
I like they're kind of the epic fantasy version of a thriller.
I think of
Clancy.
Clancy as like having this broad world building,
Yeah.
he like builds up the whole scenario.
I never liked reading the ones like the Gray Man, or these individual guys. I tried to read Brad Thor, and you're muted, Jeff. Brad Thor, and what's the other guy's name? The guy who died of cancer. Somebody else writes his book now. Anyway, I just didn't like him that much. I didn't like this individual operator goes in there and kicks butt. Just didn't. I mean, I liked maybe one book, and it didn't appeal to me after a while. But I liked the Tom Clancy, giant world-spanning epic thriller. But not enough people wrote that at the time, and it's
hard to do. For one, it takes longer,
and hardly anybody writes it anymore. So that's I read a little bit of Western way back, but mostly science fiction and fantasy are all I like to read. So it's all I really wanted to write.
I found working at the U of O, I get to look at special collections sometimes. I can't remember which writer it was. I was looking at their stuff, and he had this one page that was basically like a Western generator, and it had like kind of a choose your own, A, cowboy rancher, son of like list of characters, B, goes into a town, hits the prairie, like blah blah blah. And it was kind of funny where it just laid out all these things that basically Louis L'Amour could use to make like whatever story he wanted to write. But when you're only writing, books that are 50,000 words, it seems a lot more possible to do that. But it kind of cracked me up that I don't think I've seen something like that for, like, maybe from LSF as a joke, we could try and put it together. But
well, what's funny is like when I started writing Against All Odds, I kind of, I'm a huge Clancy fan too, and I read, Red Storm Rising and Hunt for October and all those books when I was a kid, and I kind of wanted to bring that kind of into military sci-fi the way David Weber did, because most people's military sci-fi, it is military sci-fi, but it's very action oriented, and it's less political and less thrillery, and I kind of feel like there's this whole genre that indie writers don't do because it's harder. And why would you spend more time writing a book when you could spend less time writing a book and maybe make half that money? They're like there's an ROI
ROI.
Yeah.
on it. I almost said ROE. There's an ROI on it.
Almost
And
the same thing.
but for me, it's like part of it is I want to make money, but part of it is I want to be fulfilled, and part of it is there's a genre that isn't being fulfilled,
Yeah.
and that makes financial sense right there. If I just wrote what everybody else wrote, I, I would have to be a better writer than them, and I'm not.
Well, Jeff, what's the book that you want to write if money was no object? What's the thing that you would do? Or is now not a good time for the question?
I really want to write a sort of a cross genre thing about a military unit from the '80s that goes into a fantasy world, and but it's more of an epic, final countdown. And instead of fighting the Japanese, they're fighting dragons and trying to free this world, spread democracy and search for oil. And not the oil part, but and it becomes very involved where the main character falls in love with this elf, and there's this marine private who ends up becoming he who speaks with dragons, and just all
If
this.
you want to make it realistic, it would be the Marine private marrying the elf and then taking out and getting a big loan for their furniture.
But all the things about fantasy I love combined with like really cool military action where but it's the '80s, so it's the Enterprise from the '80s, so it's not like all this tactical acumen that we have now, and all they have is what they have on board. There's no satellites, and there's no surface missiles. There's no calling in bombers and stuff, and then end it with like the sort of they have to choose between defeating this Dark Lord and going home.
Mm-hmm.
And I love the whole idea of it. I've got some visuals of it that I've created that I share once in a while because they're just so exciting, with like a tomcat running from a red dragon, breathing fire, and I just think it would be great. I don't think anybody would read it.
So what you need to do at the end is they send the Dark Lord back to their Earth, and then you can write a spin-off series about how Earth in the '80s deals with the Dark Lord. You're muted.
That's a good twist.
That's called Shadowrun, and I'd absolutely write that too. That's the other thing I would love to write. I actually would love to write in a lot of existing IP worlds, even though they don't make a lot of money. And I've reached out to tons of them, and I've never gotten not a single word back. It's
So
almost
the
like
Shadowrun publishers are listening. Jeff is available.
yes. I actually pitched a thing to Steve this morning. Told him like, here's what you got to do. You got to do these three things, and then Henry Cavill will read my book, and we'll all be on the red carpet in Milan, for the Against All Odds premiere. But and I'd love to do those, but those don't make very much money. But I'd love to play in those universes. I'd love to write a Star Trek novel. I'd love to write a Star Wars novel. I'd love to write, I almost got to write a Ghost Recon novel once, and that was really exciting. And I would do that in a heartbeat. But those are all things that are outside my genre. And even though it would be trad pub and not Amazon related, they would still release on Amazon, and it could potentially hurt my overall sales if they didn't succeed. And as we know, those books don't ever succeed. There's never a Star Wars book that everybody's talking about, or a Star Trek book, or a Ghost Recon book. Those things usually get a couple of thousand sales, and that's it. And I think at this point, to keep my success going, to be self-perpetuating, I need to sell 10 to 20,000 copies in the first 3 months.
So what about you, James? What do you want to write that you haven't written?
Yeah, I have a sword and sorcery idea that I'd like to do.
Why are we all science fiction writers who want to write fantasy?
Sword and sorcery.
It's almost. I actually wrote that in that Earth at War series. The science fiction writer main character. Somebody's talking to me. He said, "Well, of course, like all science fiction writers, I really want to write a fantasy."
I know. Well, that's the thing. I don't want to write an epic fantasy. I want to write a sword and sorcery. I want to write like a kind of weird, Michael Moorcock kind of Elric weird world with, I mean, I don't know. Like I said,
You should, James. I mean, of the three of us, you have a steady, stable job and could write anything you want. So write that.
I mean,
Three of us, James. You don't have a career, so of course
I
you can
know.
write whatever you
No, you
want.
have a career.
Well,
You have a career in security at a
I mean, I just
college.
have a very different career. I mean, and that's all part of the trade-offs we make, right? Like, if I can bring anything to the conversation, it's that okay, I've always had writing as I've always had to work, basically. I've always had to do that. So writing has never been the thing, unfortunately, that made more money than what I can do other than that. And
I aim to change that.
I mean, even from the very, like when I look, if I was talking to a high schooler right now, like the minute that I enlisted in the army and then got an ROTC scholarship, it's like I set myself up for I'm always going to make more money doing management or something related to what I did in the army than what I could make doing other things. Like that is just the reality of my life. So, I try to make decisions that are going to increase the writing career. Just the world we live in, I feel better if I have like multiple sources of income, which
Oh,
writing does for me.
dude, I don't
And
feel bad. It's not if Beth wasn't a pharmacist, I would not have a writing career. You know,
yeah.
it's very rare that you can take the time that it requires to get that career set up to where you can make a living off of it. That's why there's so few people that actually make a living off writing.
Yeah. I mean, and I'm fortunate that I've also like you guys make more money than 1% of writers. Like I've made more money than 5% of writers, and I still feel pretty good about that. But I guess if I've got commitments right now that I want to finish those commitments out, and I guess I try to be very loyal when it comes to what I do, and if I agree to do something, I feel terrible if I can't do it, so I want to do it. And then depending what happens with the way things are right now, then yeah, it might be fun to do that.
I want to read it.
I I mean, I'm not going to get into the idea because it's pretty unique. And I don't want to give it away. It's my special idea. Uh, but
I will tell you my exact idea for epic fantasy.
I'm going to write the Dragon and Tomcat novel, and Jeff's going to be really angry with me.
Nah. You know why I wouldn't be? I would be happy for you to succeed off an idea that I had.
Plus, he's never going to have the time to write it.
And also,
then we can work together.
If I did decide to write it, I would just write it anyways because I don't really care what other people do. I don't think that you should base your decisions on what you do with your life based on what other people have done or want to do.
Yeah, absolutely. It's very much available time as well. Like I don't have my 7-year-old. I'm not holding my 7-year-old right now, but that's very much a thing that I've only got so much time to get so many things done, and I think about that sometimes too. Like if I have
Multitask.
20 or 30, if I've got 30 years, how much time is that? And, this part of my life, I've just been dealing with my parents a lot. And so I think about the fact that like after 75, I don't know how much brain power you have left to do things. Like there's certain, maybe continuing to write that long will help keep your brain in a really good place. My parents didn't necessarily, stay active that way, but, I don't know. So that's something I've been thinking about. Like I definitely do want to write the things I want to write. But get through the commitments I have now and then keep going. I'm proud of everything that I write. I guess I will say that. Like it might not be the thing maybe that I was, you know, because here's the thing, like you could start a thing that you've been wanting to do forever, and that could be more debilitating because you build up so much in your mind about it that it could functionally be easier to write this other thing that maybe isn't what you think is like a magical unique idea, but it's still great and people will love it. And you could write the other thing and readers still hate it. but I don't know. So there's just a lot of factors there to think about. I think the most important thing is to be proud of the work you're doing and the time that you're doing it, because you have only so much time to get it done. You're working on the thing that you can sell, and you're doing the best you can do in the time you can do it. And as long as you're doing that, I find a lot of satisfaction in that. So I don't feel bad about it at all.
A lot of recognized limitations are self-imposed, right? Like we understand the business pretty good. We understand the craft pretty good. We understand our audience really well. It's a big part of being successful is understanding your audience. And, you can't really turn your back on any one of those aspects of those and still continue to succeed. Though people do, it does happen. It just doesn't seem like that will happen for us. So,
It's self-imposed. It's imposed by circumstances.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, if we didn't care about the outcome, you know what I mean? You know, if
We
like,
also, I mean, one thing I'll say about us too, I feel like we all have this very much in common is we are family men. We have families. We take care of our families. I feel like that's core to our values. You might meet other people that are successful that have basically just crapped on their families and their kids their whole lives or their, their spouses. And I will never do that. So
or maybe you
You can
don't
get
have
somebody
any.
like you get
yeah,
somebody like Cheney who waited until he was successful to have a spouse and a
yeah,
kid.
yeah.
I can't recommend that just because, in my experience in life, you are never ready to be married. You are never ready to have children. Waiting to be married, waiting to be ready to do anything is kind of a mistake. Unless it's a gunfight, you should be ready to do a gunfight.
We were talking about what we wanted to accomplish before we died. Um, I never really gave any thought to it as far as writing goes. Uh, I maybe because I've already accomplished more than I thought I would.
Mhm.
Uh, but I want to get 100 books, and I probably will do that with by the around the middle of next year. So I mean, not that I want to die right then.
Did you want to do 100 books by 60, right?
Well, I'll before I turn 61 is where it's going to happen.
Mhm. I mean, we
Move those
also,
goalposts, Rick.
well, we live in a world where as soon as you say like 100 books, which is an amazing accomplishment for most writers in history, there'll be somebody they'll be like, well, why don't you go to 150 or you need to push on to 200?
I'm
Like,
not going
dude,
to stop at 100.
that is a huge accomplishment. Yeah, but you know what I'm saying? Like it's
Well, what's funny is because we got our roots in indie, nothing we do is ever really going to be like good enough. The Rick and I are already some of the most successful writers in the world, really, when you come down to it, and that really says more about how much money writers don't make. And but at the same time, it's like you would think that whatever we've done would be enough of an accomplishment for X, Y, and Z, but it never is. It never is.
Yeah. Well, you know, it's because we're such a niche market. I think, particularly because military science fiction is just not something that's widely read. It's not. I mean, you're dealing with a really small number of readers. So the fact that maybe and if you watch these YouTube videos like the military science fiction classics, they're all talking about the same books that were written 30 or 40 years ago. They don't even really look at the modern stuff. None of them mention Marco Clues, for example. Uh, I mean, it's just like they think the genre stopped at the year 2000
yeah.
because it kind of went to indie in the 2010s, and they stopped reading it apparently.
There was actually a lot of MLSF published, I want to say, between like, '05 and 2010 that I'm always kind of surprised to see it from a major publisher. Like, oh, they did that. I don't know who those
Yeah,
right,
no, I mean, John Ringo made his career on military science fiction. David Weber,
Mhm.
but that's the problem. I can think of those two names and not many others.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, a lot of what people call military science fiction from that era is not really military science fiction, you know?
And it
So,
was definitely marketed as space opera most of the time, I want to say. Like even if
yes.
it definitely the main character was in the military and in reading the blurb you can tell like, oh yeah, this is MLSF. That's not what the cover will basically communicate.
David Drake made his career in military science fiction.
Yeah.
Um,
But when did he stop writing though? Like his last book came out in like 98 or 99, right?
I don't know. I don't think it was that early.
I thought he passed
He
around
he,
then.
he passed like in the 20 teens, I thought.
Oh, okay.
I mean, what am I wrong about that, Jeff?
I associate David Drake like because all I
I can
mostly
look it up.
see his things from the 80s,
Oh,
from the
he
70s and
died in
80s.
2023.
Oh
Oh
wow.
wow. Okay. Well, I apologize.
Yeah, because I remember there was like he was sick for a while, and people were talking about how sad it was that he was sick.
Looks like his last book was published in 2012.
Okay.
Crown of Empire.
No, he had one published in 2015. Into the
Oh yeah, he
Maelstrom.
did. Into the Maelstrom. Yeah. Two in 2015, it looks like.
I think that was about the time he started getting sick.
Mhm.
Air and Darkness and Into the Maelstrom.
Yeah. But
Oh, he wrote with Eric Flynn. I didn't know that.
with who?
Eric Flint.
Oh, Eric Flint. Okay. Yeah, another guy who
145.
passed away.
Same age as
Yeah.
my dad.
But the point being is try to achieve some of those goals before you kick the bucket. And you know,
Honestly, the only thing that lasts, unless you are in a more widespread genre where the books get adapted to movies or something like that, the only thing that we could do that lasts is to help other people,
Right.
help other authors, to have people remember that we help them, and that's how they remember us. Because nothing that I have no illusions that any of my books are going to be like mentioned in, the best science fiction books ever. Not enough people have read them.
Well, something you realize too the longer you're in is like the best science fiction of anything is very subjective, right? So
It is, but I think that unfortunately, far too often, the people who make those statements are literary readers.
yeah.
They read literary fiction. They don't read science fiction unless it's got a literary flavor to it. Because
yeah,
I know
sure.
that none of the books they consider the best science fiction ever are what I consider the best science fiction ever.
Most of them I don't even consider science fiction.
Yeah.
But I'm a genre hardliner. I kind of feel like, sci-fi is sci-fi, fantasy is fantasy, romance is romance. And it doesn't matter what the setting is. But
Yeah.
I do know that I do hope that people keep reading Against All Odds after I'm gone. But I don't really have any control over that, so it's not something I'm losing sleep on. My kids will keep reading it. That's all that matters to me really is my kids and
I
my
don't know
wife.
that I honestly care if anybody reads my stuff after I'm gone, except for the fact that if they keep buying it, the royalties
Royalties.
go to my family.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, as soon as we die, that's when everything gets pushed, right? Because they have to pay us
Then they get more money.
Exactly. It won't help us, but hopefully it'll help our kids.
Well, we've talked about a lot. I think we've covered some good ground here. The write in a genre you love. If you're going to experiment, maybe use a pen. Think hard about using a pen name. If you hit big or hit mid, stick to what's making you the money. Don't try to. That's not the time to experiment. The time to experiment is either when you're not successful anymore or when you're so successful it doesn't matter. And also, it's really, really important. And under no circumstances can you ever not do this.
Funny.
I see what you
So
did there.
make sure you also like and subscribe.
And the secret to being a millionaire and writing military science fiction.
I know. But we just need to throw out the secret to being a six-figure author. And this is what you need to do to be a six-figure author.
Listen to James.
Start 25 years ago.
Exactly. Well, inflation just makes six-figure like a five-figure author, right? So
Yeah.
we'll just catch
You're
up.
not even joking there. That's not funny.
I know. All right. Well, hey, thanks for hanging out with us. I hope this was useful. Hope it gave you something to think about because it's definitely the kind of conversation I wish I'd had when I was first starting out. So I look back on things I wrote in 2016 or published initially and just kind of cringe about where I was at. So, all right. Thanks for hanging out. Please like and subscribe, like we said, and check us out in the Discord. We'll see you later.
Adios.
Adios.